Thank you for joining us for another episode of our Achieving Alpha podcast, a series on accelerating returns for private equity funds. Today, we will be focusing on the consumer space, and particularly, we will be discussing the lean FMCG model and concept. Joining us is Umesh Shah. Umesh has spent over 30 years in FMCG, or fast-moving consumer goods. He has spent most of his time with Unilever, where he served as CEO of Unilever International, a global business unit that he himself conceptualized that plays in white spaces in brands, channels, geographies, and consumers that Unilever operating companies do not cover. During his tenure as CEO of Unilever International, he was responsible for setting up distribution and brands, building infrastructure in over 130 countries with teams working in 10 hubs globally. Welcome, Umesh, to our podcast, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So maybe we can get started a little bit about talking about the lean FMCG model. So when we say FMCG, we often think of these big companies like Unilever, P&G, Nestle, and so forth. So the concept of lean FMCG is, pretty interesting. Could you explain a little bit about what we're talking about today and why we're talking about it now?
Yeah. No, good question. The typical FMCG model, what we have, comprises of consumer research, which throws the interesting trend. Then it goes to R&D, then product development, and then supply chain, procurement, and then marketing, and then sales. Yeah, it's quite an elaborate kind of a model, and that model has worked in the past quite well. But with the emergence of ecosystem players in the area of marketing, sales, R&D, etc., a lot of companies realize that there is no point of having all the resources in-house. Yeah, and that's how the kind of a lean FMCG model was born a few years back. And I had the privilege of really creating that in Unilever and scaling it up to about 1.4 billion, 5 billion in Unilever. So I'm quite, I was happy to really see the results of this entire model. Why we are talking it now? Because if you see the FMCG trend, the research shows that the big companies are losing market share. In the last 10 years, most of them are losing shares. And who are losing shares? They're losing shares to the startup companies, small companies, regional companies. And you would have heard of the Korean cosmetics and Korean beauty players. The way they came into the market, and they started chipping away market shares from the big boys. And they all were following the lean FMCG model. They were all like a small companies coming, taking use of ecosystem of manufacturing R&D, and then launching the products at a speed which the big companies couldn't really match. So that how the lean FMCG kind of word or the concept became popular, and people realized that, hey, why do I need to have an elaborate organization to succeed in the marketplace? Yeah, so that's how it came in.
So thank you for that. That was really interesting. And I think you touched a little bit on it, about, distribution and brands, but can you describe for us the key features or components of a lean FMCG model? And how does that really differentiate from a fully resourced model operated by large FMCG companies?
Yeah. So if you take a typical consumer company, the process starts with consumer research. Yeah, you research the consumer trends, you find out what works, what doesn't work. Then it goes to R&D. They find out are there any kind of molecules, are there any technologies available, and then you develop the product. And then it goes to kind of a supply chain who tries to manufacture the product, and then it goes to marketing who kind of devise the system, and then it goes for distribution. Now it takes a long time. Now, in a typical lean FMCG model, what happens is that you get everything ready from the ecosystem players. Yeah, you have companies who are also telling you what consumer trends are currently available, what consumer wants as of now. Yeah, they are giving you ready things on the plate. And there are various models on that. Depending on what is your comfort level, you can implement any model. The first is OEM model, where you all know that you know the product, you have the product, and you get it manufactured, and that works. But then the ODM model, where you don't even have a design understanding, you just know the product that needs to be designed, okay, and you go and go to the guys who design the product and manufacture for you. And then there's an OBM model, where even if you don't have a brand, then they give you a brand, they give you a ready kind of a model, which you just pay money and starts kind of sourcing and then selling. Typical components are like R&D. You don't need to have an in-house R&D. R&D is available outside. Then manufacturing, of course, the manufacturing has evolved to such an extent that in most of the cases, my experience is that the outside manufacturing setup, what we have now across many countries, is much better than your own in-house manufacturing. They're more agile, more productive, less cost, less risky. Yeah. And then it comes to say marketing. Marketing, we all know that whole marketing scenario has changed with the digital marketing setup, etc. You can actually sit in one place and really do marketing in any country. When I was running Unilever International, we were selling in 130 countries, and sitting in Singapore, we were marketing the products digitally in all these countries. Yeah. So whenever a typical target consumer comes online, our ad appears in, say, Mongolia or Papua New Guinea or Fiji. Yeah. And the last one is distribution. Distribution, there are some fantastic now ecosystem partners available. If you look at even the Singapore market, if you turn around and see the pack, most of the cases you will find it will be distributed and marketed by not the own companies, but a typical third-party service provider. So what I'm saying is that you can really use ecosystem players, okay, to expedite your product launch and product marketing.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, it seems like basically what we're doing is, we're, as you mentioned, building that ecosystem or building that platform of partners that really enables us to go to market at a really high speed in a more agile manner. That brings us more flexibility in terms of cost as well, right? And leveraging obviously the expertise of people who basically do this every day,
yeah,
right? So that's really interesting. But if we bring this to more of a market lens, like, could you share examples of companies that have successfully implemented this model, and how have they grown? What's the impact they've had over the last couple of years, maybe?
So I think the company which I can quote where I have worked is a Unilever International, where we actually developed $1 billion+ euro of business using this model. Yeah, we used third-party manufacturing, we use a third-party R&D players, we use a third-party regulatory compliance players and marketing, etc. But outside Unilever International, while I'll not name them, but there are a number of examples. We all aware of the Korean and Japanese beauty and cosmetic players. Yes. Okay, sometimes we all understand, oh my God, these guys have got very elaborate R&D and innovation departments of their own. But when you go to Korea, you realize that most of them depend on 3 or 4 big innovation companies who innovate for them, yeah, and manufacture for them. Yeah, and this is how the Korean companies and the startup companies in a CPG space really stormed the market and gave competition to the big players. So but there are many examples across the world now. There is a company which was a US company. It sold their products, or it launched the products in 35 countries in a span of 18 months. 18 months, just using the third-party distribution model across these 35 countries. Yeah, finally it was acquired by one MNC. So there are many examples. And, in terms of the impact is very simple. It's highly flexible. It's very lean, so you don't have a resource intensive. The third is it's less risky. If it doesn't work, you just withdraw it. I mean, in Unilever International, we launched products in 130 countries, and we had a model of one launch a working day. And we had successfully implemented that. But 30% failed, 70% succeeded. 30% failed, you withdraw very fast. So it's a low risk, low cost, highly agile, flexible model, and more than that, it's a highly productive. So you get the best in class of the ecosystem players.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think personally for me, I so let's say when I was younger, right, much younger, I would always bug my parents to bring me to Korea because I wanted to buy Korean skincare products, right? And I didn't understand, so I had to go to the shop and try to understand which is the best product, why they're the best product, and I also have to purchase it there. But today, I get it delivered to my house in like 2 days. I go online, I can find out all the information about it, I can understand everything. And so like I think as a consumer, there's also an impact of the lean FMCG model, maybe from a different lens.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
So I think then if we take on the private equity lens, right, how does this lean FMCG model then differ in terms of impact and investment opportunities for PE investors? Why is it attractive for PE investors to either invest in a lean FMCG company or to transform their existing portfolios into lean FMCG?
Yeah, a good question. I think for private equity, we all know that they have a 5 or 10 years of span of working. Okay, they are not there to kind of own a business, own a brand, which can go for decades. Yeah, so for them this is very important because they are not someone who will commit on a lot of own resources. They need to keep exit in mind. Yeah, and when they get a comfort that, hey, I have a fantastic brand with me, I have a good business with me, and if they get a comfort that I don't need to really know everything about the FMCG model to really succeed in the global markets, that gives a comfort. Yeah, and the classic example in A&M world is that we had one proposal where we kind of convince investor to kind of buy the brands just based on a lean FMCG model. It started with a discussion that, okay, no, but how will I manufacture? How will I develop the products? Where is the R&D resources? I don't have time to do all those stuff. And at the end of the day, we developed a model for them, and that model was kind of accepted. My God, this is fantastic. We just buy the brands and then start running the show.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that example, Umesh. So if you recall, I worked with you on that project as well, and I remember, working with manufacturers and being very amazed at the level of depth that they can actually, third-party manufacturers, and the level of depth that they can actually get to in terms of, understanding formulation in a particular market. When you talk to distributors, when you talk to, marketing agencies, in terms of understanding the level of depth and breadth that they have and how you can really leverage them, right? So I think one other thing we wanted to cover in terms of the lens from a private equity firm is how can a PE support a portfolio company's transition from a traditional FMCG model to a lean FMCG model? Or could a platform be built around buy and build?
Yeah. No, good question. So it's not about the lean FMCG model doesn't mean that you need to be new, you need to be kind of a fresh to start the model. There are many examples where you can actually restructure your existing FMCG model or existing FMCG company and transform that into a lean FMCG model. Okay, we have a number of examples in even the MNC world wherever big MNC companies operated in the small countries. Yeah, they have actually deployed this lean FMCG model. In many cases, so even it's the large FMCG companies also have deployed that. We are actually currently working, with a large FMCG on one project where you can actually convert, for their existing operations, restructure. So it brings the cost down. It is more productive because you can be more efficient in portfolio deployment, and it is actually a value creating model when you move from a traditional FMCG model to a lean FMCG model.
Thank you, Umesh. That has been really insightful. To our listeners, please stay tuned for part 2 of this discussion, where we will be talking more about how PEs or organizations should think about building an organization that can design and run the lean FMCG model.